I'd like to conclude with a look at Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera, both artists who are incredibly famous in 20th century Mexico, and both artists in their own way who draw from the indigenous past and also respond to the Mexican Revolution. Diego Rivera is going to, in fact, use murals to convey his ideas. Murals were a part of the pre-Columbian tradition, and they are commonly displayed in all of the civilizations that existed in Mesoamerica to make statements both political and both religious. Diego is in his murals, his 20th century murals, stressing pride in being Mexican. And this is a product of the Mexican Revolution. Diego actually trained in Europe. He learned fresco there, so he can transport it over here, but he's going to manipulate it in a populist way to reach the people with simple messages, although it might be a complex narrative, lots of details, but the message is always going to be clear. As will be the forms, crisp, clear outlines, drawing and being influenced by the style, quite literally, of pre-Columbian art and blending it a little bit with Mexican folk art traditions. Okay, let me say something about the Mexican Revolution. It takes place between 1910 and 1920. It is the result of the horrors of the rule under a dictator whose name was Diaz. What Diaz wanted to do was institute, quote, order and progress to modernize Mexico. He decided to do this by favoring white Europeans and foreigners over the native people, over the mestizos and the pure Indians. He introduces and promotes the hacienda system, which is a system of estate farming, which generally the estates were owned by foreigners who were very oppressive, who treated the native workers under them as if they were slaves. This became very brutal, very oppressive, with a rough form of justice associated with it. As a result of this ongoing situation in Mexico and the fact that the peasants, the people, had a sense of absolutely no hope if they continued this way, there was a revolution, a rebellion, that is going to bring huge change to Mexico. It's also going to cost over 1 million lives because over a million will die during the 10-year period of the Mexican Revolution. But when it's done, there will be a new constitution and a very progressive Mexico. There will be land reform and reform of church and of the army and of the educational system in Mexico. This is also going to spark a quest to define the national identity of Mexico. And the questions are going to be raised: who are Mexicans? What is their cultural heritage? What is the direction of us for the future? Diego Rivera is one of the artists who is hired to work in a Mexican mural program to address those questions and quite literally to engage in art that helps to shape identity. The identity that Diego is responsible for helping to form continues in Mexico even today. And we're talking about 100 years after the Mexican Revolution. Okay, this is one sample from Mexico City, one of Diego's mural paintings, detail only of Diego's mural painting. It is in O'Reilly and figure 8.42. It shows an Aztec ruler seated right here, or perhaps over here. You can see the ruler being surrounded almost like a halo-like form in a chair, marking his authority, seated on a throne. Behind this Aztec ruler is an image of prosperity in the Aztec world. This is Tenochtitlan, the capital. You can see the canal work. You can see the roads. You can see the bustling economy. Diego has given you a panorama that seems to extend into the distance, suggesting not only the authority of the Aztec ruler, but also the prosperity of all of the people under Aztec rule. The forms in this composition tend to be rounded, crisp, clear, simplified. Individual forms tend to be simplified and do reflect the influence that Diego drew from looking at and observing Aztec art as well as other pre-Columbian traditions. Okay. Diego is also going to learn while he is in Europe. He trains in Europe. He comes back basically after the Mexican Revolution to work and becomes one of the voices for change in Mexico. His paintings tend to support Mexican heritage and ideals and the past of Mexico with a sense of pride. The painting on the left is Flower Day. It was done in 1925. This happens to be one of Diego's oil paintings on canvas. It's a good one for us to look at, though, because it's easy to understand. It only has 3 figures. It's easy to talk about as well. Diego did train in Europe, and he was well aware of the Renaissance traditions. That's where he's learning fresco. If you take a look at this composition, it shows a flower vendor who's carrying a burden basket filled with flowers that he's bringing to sell to these 2 women. The figures fill the frame, fill the picture plane. They are simplified. They are also anonymous figures, not individuals. In fact, we barely see the faces of these figures, so they can represent everybody in Mexico, not just the people that we're looking at. It is created with influence from the Italian Renaissance, and that can be seen with the interlocking triangles. Okay, one of them goes right here through our flower vendor. The other one comes down from the bottom up the female figures and through the male figure. So we have 2 interlocking triangles. We also have a central figure along a central axis, so this is very formal. And that, of course, also might put a nod to Aztec creations. It's a closed composition. No one in the painting looks at us. And it is a very formal composition. It consists of relatively flat, simplified forms, which does suggest in part the influence of Aztec art. The surfaces seem to be rounded, smooth, swelling, and convey a quality of geometric regularity. I've put, in fact, a sample of Aztec sculpture down in the lower corner. That's one of our serpents. There are 2 reasons for that. One, to remind us that Aztec images tended to be swelling, rounded, simplified, and geometric, and that carries over into the swelling, simplified forms of Diego Rivera. In addition to that, however, this particular painting, which Diego did a series of versions of this subject, this particular painting references Aztec culture in 2 separate ways, we believe. One is actually referencing the carvings of serpents. If you go down here in the foreground and see the painted image, it should suggest to you the shape of the tail of the rattlesnake. Okay, if that doesn't convince you, I'm going to read you a poem that was written by a priest poet. O'Reilly talks about these members of the elite Aztec society, the priest poets who help to define aesthetics. What is beautiful? What is good art? This is one of their poems, and it is about flowers. Quote, "I've come to offer you songs, flowers to make your head spin. Oh, another kind of flower, and you know it in your heart. I've come to bring them to you. I've carried them to you on my back to your house, uprooted flowers. I've bent double with the weight of them just for you." This is an actual Aztec poem that survived, and we also know that the Aztecs loved flowers. It was something that they allowed the Chinampas to actually reserve space for, to grow flowers that could be appreciated and used in their culture. This then directly references Aztec culture, Aztec style, and it is created specifically to promote a sense of pride in the heritage of Mexico, in its indigenous cultures, and especially the Aztecs. Okay, upper right, that picture, which I haven't mentioned, is of Diego Rivera. It's one of his self-portraits. I think it's the young Diego. Well, he is in Europe, and I think it's Diego trying to look ever so cool. Both Diego and Frida were committed to the ideals of the Mexican Revolution. Frida, perhaps too much so, because she claimed to be born in 1910. She wasn't. 1910 is the year that the Mexican Revolution begins. It lasts until 1920. Frida Kahlo was actually born in 1907, but she wanted to position herself to be associated with it and with the changes that were being made in Mexico, particularly as the wife of Diego Rivera, which she will become. Frida, when she is in her teens, is going to be the victim of a bus accident. And if you look down at the lower right, you're going to see her drawing of that. She nearly dies. Her mother, in helping Frida to recover and I guess get therapy for it, allowed Frida and encouraged Frida, brought her paints, brought her a mirror, and set Frida up in her bedroom so she could actually do self-portraits. Frida Kahlo will begin her career as a painter, then self-taught, working in isolation to solve her own problems. That's exactly what Frida is going to continue to do with her works of art as well. That is a photo of Frida in the upper right, and I simply wanted you to be able to compare it to see how closely Frida Kahlo actually comes in the works that she produces. They tend to look like they are derived a little bit from folk art, and they are, but they also are quite accurate in their portrayal of Frida's reality, and that's what she says she's doing, by the way, recording her own reality. Most of Frida's works are self-portraits. Most of them are close to us. Most of them are frontal, direct, and isolated. By isolated, I mean without other human beings. In this case, we have a couple of Frida's pets, perhaps disturbing in the image, the little kitty cat in particular. But usually her self-portraits are without other human beings in the painting. Very linear, very detailed, and we might expect that of an artist who is self-taught. She uses oil, very richly colored images, and these images tend to be very small in scale. She began by painting when she was in bed and could not manage large-scale works from that position. She later will have continued problems with her back and remain working small in scale as a reflection of, I'm going to say, some physical limitations. Her works of art are going to be very, very different from Diego's. In part, they are going to be smaller, but they're also going to be much more personal. They are about the emotions, the feelings that Frida experiences in her lifetime, while Diego's paintings are going to be about very grand statements about the history of the Mexican people. They're going to be large in scale, they're going to be for public display, and they are going to reveal very little about Diego Rivera himself. They're going to instead be powerful, monumental, and somewhat, in that sense, gender differentiated statements in terms of Latin America, the gender roles between males and females. Frida's image, which is located on the left, is the one, it's called Self-Portrait with a Thorn Necklace, created in 1940, is the one I have chosen as a sample of Frida's work. She is very early on going to decide maybe she wants to be an artist while she is recovering. And she decides to send some of her work to the superstar Diego Rivera, who gets it, encourages her. The two of them become friends and then lovers, fall in love, and do get married. This marriage, however, is a very, very rocky one. They're going to divorce in 1939. The painting on your left, Self-Portrait with a Thorn Necklace, was done in 1940. This is in the period of separation and divorce when Frida and Diego are not together. What Frida records here is that the pain and suffering she's experiencing as a martyr to love. So she's taking on almost a religious overtone here. It's very serious, it's very solemn. Again, there is a sense of isolation, except for the house pets that she has as a part of the composition. She is referencing Christian imagery and the blood of Christ with the thorn crown, the thorn necklace acting like Jesus' crown of thorns that is wrapped around her neck, piercing her neck and causing blood to drip down. The hummingbird, the dead hummingbird that hangs from the necklace, is also Catholic folk art, and it's linked with pre-Columbian symbols as well. It was a remedy, part of a remedy that a shaman in particular, a folk healer, might suggest for someone who has lost their love. So it's part of folk medicine to bring back a lover or someone that you have lost. This image then is Frida's drawing from a variety of sources, and among those sources would be pre-Columbian subject matter and Christian subject matter. Frida Kahlo was particularly drawn to bloody images associated with Christ. And I'd like just for a moment for you to think about that. The idea of Jesus as a sacrificial victim bringing new life is going to parallel in many ways the ideas of the Aztecs and sacrificial victims being offered to bring new life. Okay. These are just additional images that'll give you a little bit of a sense of what Frida Kahlo was drawing on. Frida below left is Frida Kahlo holding up a piece of Olmec sculpture. That is one of our earliest high civilizations in Mesoamerica, and it will continue to influence cultures following it, including the Aztecs. The two other pictures, the one on the right is Frida holding folk sculpture, but the painted image upper left is also folk art, and it is basically a thank you, an ex voto, thanking in this case I believe the Virgin for a miraculous cure due to the prayers of the family, and the family located right over here, for a successful operation that took place in a hospital. Frida draws from a variety of sources, creating works that are fundamentally her own, very personal works, and again, in somewhat opposition to Diego Rivera's public statements. But both of these artists creating works that help to promote the ideas that were a part of the Mexican Revolution and the changes that will take place in Mexico and what we have come to call the Mexican Renaissance.